Jay, Prince just sent a message to the rap industry that caught almost everybody off guard, and the timing couldn't have been more interesting because most fans believed the situation had already cooled off. But instead of fading away, it's suddenly heating back up again. At the center of it all is Finesse2Tymes, who reportedly remains locked into one of the toughest independent deals in hip-hop. And the man standing behind that agreement just made it crystal clear that walking away won't be as easy as many people think. No matter how much money NBA YoungBoy might be willing to bring to the table, this isn't the type of deal that gets solved with a simple wire transfer. According to everything being discussed, that door isn't swinging open anytime soon. Not today, not tomorrow, and definitely not unless every piece of the business is handled exactly the way it's supposed to be. That's why this story has become much bigger than fans originally expected. On social media, everything looks completely different. You see pictures, support, loyalty, smiling faces, and people acting like YoungBoy and Finesse are already moving as one. From the outside, it feels like nothing but brotherhood. But behind those posts, there could be an entirely different business battle taking place that fans never get to witness. That's usually where the biggest industry stories unfold, far away from the cameras. Jay! Prince didn't spend decades building Rap-A-Lot Records into one of the most respected names in hip-hop by allowing artists to simply leave whenever another major artist came calling. His reputation has always been built around business, structure, and protecting what belongs to his organization. That's why the situation goes much deeper than another artist wanting to switch teams. It's about contracts, leverage, and the value of keeping your word. The biggest question everybody keeps asking is simple. If Finesse2Tymes and NBA YoungBoy have such a strong relationship, then why can't Finesse just make the move? What's actually inside that contract that's stopping everything? And more importantly, what does Jay, Prince's recent response, tell us about who really holds the power behind the scenes? Those are the questions fueling this entire conversation across social media. Today, we're breaking down every angle of the situation, separating confirmed facts from internet speculation, and explaining why this story could become far more complicated before anybody reaches an agreement. Because once contracts, money, loyalty, and reputation all collide, things usually get messy long before they get resolved. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, this is where we break down the business politics, industry relationships, street connections, and behind-the-scenes power moves that many mainstream platforms either overlook or rush through without giving the full picture. We don't just repeat headlines. We explain why these stories actually matter. Today's topic revolves around one of the most talked-about situations in hip-hop involving Jay, Prince, Finesse2Tymes, and NBA YoungBoy. On the surface, it looks like another artist trying to change situations. But once you dig deeper, you realize the story sits right at the intersection of business, loyalty, contracts, and industry influence, making it much more layered than most people realize. Stay with us until the end, because what it could realistically take for Finesse2Tymes to separate himself from this agreement might surprise a lot of people. The answer isn't nearly as simple as paying money or signing a new contract somewhere else. There are multiple moving pieces that many fans aren't even considering right now. Before we go any further, let's acknowledge one thing. Social media has been completely flooded with opinions, fan theories, rumors, and people confidently choosing sides, as if they've personally read every page of the contract. The reality is much different. Almost everyone discussing the situation is working with small pieces of information rather than the entire picture. Some fans immediately blame Jay, Prince for standing in the way. Others believe NBA YoungBoy should simply buy Finesse out of the contract. Then there are people convinced Finesse can wake up tomorrow, leave, and sign somewhere else whenever he wants. Unfortunately, that's not how legally binding agreements work, especially when multiple business interests are involved. Throughout this breakdown, we're going to separate publicly available information from internet assumptions while explaining how the situation gradually developed into what everybody is debating today. Because without understanding the business side first, it's almost impossible to understand why this story has become such a major topic. To really understand everything happening here, you first have to understand the people involved, not just as rappers or celebrities, but as individuals operating inside an industry built on reputation, loyalty, relationships, and unwritten rules that often matter just as much as the paperwork itself. Jay, Prince isn't simply another record executive. He's widely recognized as one of the most influential figures in hip-hop history. His impact stretches well beyond music contracts because he helped build Rap-A-Lot Records from the ground up in Houston during a time when many major labels barely took the city's music scene seriously. Over decades, he developed artists, navigated complicated industry politics, and built a reputation that even longtime critics have acknowledged. On the other side is Finesse2Tymes, an artist from Memphis whose career has gained tremendous momentum through an authentic style that feels raw, direct, and deeply connected to his upbringing. His music resonates because it sounds genuine rather than manufactured. Fans hear real-life experiences instead of polished industry formulas. And that's exactly what helped him build such a loyal audience. When NBA YoungBoy publicly began showing support for Finesse, the connection didn't feel forced at all. Most fans immediately saw the chemistry between them. From the outside, it looked like two artists with similar energy, similar backgrounds, and similar approaches to music naturally finding common ground. It felt like a partnership that made complete sense both creatively and culturally. YoungBoy has always gravitated toward artists who feel authentic, artists whose music reflects struggle, survival, and real experiences rather than carefully manufactured images. That's one reason so many people believe the collaboration between the two could eventually become something much bigger than just a few songs together. But this is exactly where the story begins taking an unexpected turn. Finesse2Tymes didn't reach this level without signing agreements that reportedly come with significant obligations. Those obligations now appear to be at the center of everything happening. And according to reports surrounding the situation, those business ties may be far more restrictive than many fans originally believed. To understand why this has become such a complicated issue, it helps to look closely at the type of agreement Finesse reportedly signed. Public reports suggest he is operating under what's commonly described as a 360 deal, which works very differently from traditional recording contracts many fans are familiar with. Under a traditional record agreement, a label typically invests in recording, marketing, and distributing an artist's music while receiving an agreed percentage from music-related revenue. That's generally where the relationship begins and ends. But a 360 deal expands far beyond recorded music and reaches into multiple areas of an artist's career. With this type of arrangement, the company may receive percentages from touring, merchandise, sponsorships, endorsements, publishing, acting opportunities, brand partnerships, and several other revenue streams connected to the artist's overall business. Instead of participating in only album sales, the company becomes involved in nearly every part of the artist's financial success. When both sides trust each other and remain committed to growing the artist's career, a 360 deal can actually benefit everyone involved because the company has a stronger incentive to invest in building every aspect of the artist's brand. But once trust begins breaking down, or if a new opportunity appears elsewhere, that same agreement can suddenly feel much harder to escape. Reports surrounding the situation suggest Finesse2Tymes may be dealing with more than a standard 360 contract. According to claims circulating publicly, the agreement could give Jay, Prince's organization, significant control over multiple areas of Finesse's career, including business opportunities, music releases, commercial partnerships, and other important decisions tied to his professional future. If those reports are accurate, then any serious move toward NBA YoungBoy, or any other label for that matter, would require careful negotiations between all parties involved. It wouldn't simply be a matter of signing new paperwork somewhere else. Everything would have to be approved, financially structured, and legally negotiated before any transition could happen without creating a major contractual dispute behind closed doors. That means even if YoungBoy walked in with enough money to buy Finesse out today, things still wouldn't be nearly as simple as writing one massive check. Contracts like these often contain multiple clauses protecting the original company's long-term interests, including royalty structures, future earnings, and financial obligations that can continue long after an artist changes labels. Here's the part many fans continue overlooking. Jay, Prince isn't negotiating from a position of desperation. When you spend decades building one of the most respected names in hip-hop while creating relationships throughout the music industry, you don't feel pressure to accept every offer or place in front of you. Sometimes the strongest negotiating position comes from simply being willing to wait. Patience becomes a powerful advantage during contract disputes because a side needing an immediate resolution usually ends up making the biggest concessions. J. Prince understands exactly how valuable his name, his organization, and his business network are. That's likely why he appears completely comfortable holding his position rather than rushing toward a quick resolution. When artists sign agreements connected to J. Prince, they're not just signing with another label. They're attaching themselves to decades of influence, relationships, industry respect, and business infrastructure that extends far beyond music itself. That reputation carries real value, and it's something J. Prince has spent an entire career building. From his perspective, there may be absolutely no reason to release Finesse2Tymes from an agreement he believes was negotiated fairly, entered willingly, and remains legally enforceable. And that's exactly where the story starts becoming even more complicated than most people originally imagined. To really understand why NBA YoungBoy is reportedly trying to buy Finesse2Tymes out his current deal, you have to go back to where their relationship started. The brotherhood everybody sees today wasn't always there. In fact, there was a time when these two artists appeared to be on completely opposite sides, and their relationship looked like it was heading in the wrong direction instead of toward friendship. At one point, the tension between YoungBoy and Finesse2Tymes became impossible to ignore. Their issues played out publicly, and because both artists carried strong reputations, loyal entourages, and plenty of pride, many people believed the situation had the potential to become much bigger than social media posts or a few indirect lyrics. Once street politics and rap politics begin overlapping, even the smallest misunderstanding can quickly grow into something much more serious. That's how these situations usually unfold. Every Instagram post gets analyzed. Every interview gets dissected. Every lyric becomes a hidden message. And every move gets interpreted as either respect or disrespect. Before long, fans begin creating their own narratives, making it difficult to separate actual facts from assumptions built entirely on internet speculation. Both YoungBoy and Finesse come from environments where respect isn't something people take lightly. Neither one built his reputation by backing away from pressure. And when two artists with that type of energy find themselves on opposite sides, the disagreement rarely stays between just two people. Friends, affiliates, supporters, and entire fan bases eventually become involved, making everything much more complicated. At the time, different versions of what supposedly caused the friction started spreading through interviews, social media posts, and comments from people claiming to know both camps. Like most rap disputes, multiple stories surface simultaneously. Some blame one side, others blame the other. And before long, it became almost impossible to determine exactly where the original disagreement actually began. What people didn't notice, however, was a clear shift in energy. There weren't police reports or public incidents dominating headlines. Instead, there were subtle signs, cold interactions, indirect comments, shorter conversations, and noticeable changes in alliances. Inside the Memphis to Louisiana lane of hip-hop, enough people close to those circles recognized the tension that the situation became a real topic behind the scenes. But here's what many fans fail to understand whenever they talk about rap beef ending. When two respected artists with pride, influence, and loyal support systems decide to put differences behind them, it's much bigger than shaking hands for a photo or standing together on stage. Resolving that kind of conflict represents maturity, strategic thinking, and understanding that long-term success sometimes matters more than holding on to old problems. That appears to be exactly what eventually happened between NBA YoungBoy and Finesse2Tymes. Whatever disagreement existed between them slowly faded away, and over time their relationship completely changed. Instead of continuing the tension, fans suddenly started seeing support, public respect, and genuine interaction between both artists in a way that didn't seem forced or manufactured. From the outside, their reconnection didn't feel like another industry publicity stunt created only for cameras or social media engagement. It looked authentic. Their chemistry appeared natural, and the respect they showed each other seemed genuine. That's exactly why the next chapter surprised so many people, because what once looked like tension had transformed into visible loyalty and conversations about potentially building something much bigger together. Watching how they moved publicly, it became obvious that YoungBoy wasn't simply treating Finesse like another artist. The relationship appeared deeper than business alone. There seemed to be real admiration for everything Finesse represented, his authenticity, his background, and the way he earned respect through real-life experiences rather than industry marketing campaigns. That's also what makes the current contract situation so frustrating from YoungBoy's perspective. Reports suggest he genuinely wants to support Finesse, invest in his future, and continue building alongside him. But if existing contractual obligations are standing in the way, then what appears simple to fans suddenly becomes incredibly complicated once lawyers, percentages, approvals, and legal responsibilities enter the conversation. That may explain why YoungBoy reportedly explored the possibility of buying Finesse out of his current agreement. It wasn't presented as another label trying to collect artists for publicity. Instead, it looked much more like someone attempting to help a person he now considers part of his own circle. In hip-hop, gestures like that often carry more meaning than money itself, because loyalty earned during difficult situations lasts much longer than publicity. Now, this story becomes even more interesting once you factor in the history between NBA YoungBoy and Jay Prince. These aren't two people meeting for the very first time to negotiate business. Their relationship already includes previous tension, and in both the music industry and the streets, history has a way of influencing every future conversation. Jay, Prince, and YoungBoy have crossed paths before under circumstances that generated plenty of discussion. Because of that history, any negotiation involving Finesse automatically carries additional pressure. This was never going to be a straightforward business conversation between strangers. It's an interaction between one of hip-hop's most respected veterans and one of the biggest stars from a younger generation. Whenever personalities with that much influence sit across from each other, respect becomes extremely important. Neither side wants to appear weak in front of the industry, and neither built their reputation by quickly backing down whenever disagreements surfaced. That's why conversations involving contracts can easily become about much more than paperwork alone. For years, people throughout hip-hop have discussed the complicated relationship between Jay, Prince, and NBA YoungBoy. Jay, Prince has publicly made it clear that he's never been overly impressed by popularity, streaming numbers, or massive fan bases. That's simply not how he's operated throughout his career. His reputation was built long before the social media era ever existed. After spending decades navigating difficult business situations, Prince established himself as someone who rarely changes positions simply because outside pressure begins building. That history matters here, because if YoungBoy truly attempted to buy Finesse out of his deal, Prince likely viewed the conversation as much bigger than whatever dollar amount may have been offered. In Prince's world, the approach often matters just as much as the offer itself. It's not simply about who brings the biggest check. It's about recognizing the relationships already established, respecting the money previously invested, and acknowledging the work done long before an artist became valuable enough for everyone else to suddenly take interest.